Well, I like the way this video comes right out of the last one, this question. It says, thinking of art. This is from, his name is Kaya, and I've been calling him Kaya, but that's what it says on his site. So maybe he prefers to have that whole handle, I guess you'd call it. Thinking of art as the music of color. And by the way, I think of it as the music of color, but I think of it as the music of all sorts of things, not just color. It's everything spatial, everything abstract, everything. Anyway, but I like where he goes with this, and I think this is where I get to put myself out there completely on the edge, okay, with everybody who thinks that abstract painting is hell and evil. So here we go. Here's the question. Thinking of art as the music of color, please share your views on abstract movements in art. Could some abstract art be seen as a pure form of using color to generate an effect? And, that's a natural follow-on, to that comment I made, because why wouldn't you think that? In fact, there are people who say, why don't you just become an abstract painter? Because that's what you think it is, right? But it isn't, actually. It isn't. It's a vehicle for accessing the world we live in. It's the music in the world we live in. That's the part I've actually never quite appreciated about abstract painting. They've taken it out. They've taken it completely out of the world. Now it's a pure abstraction. Now, in a sense, you could argue that music is a pure abstraction. But the music we're finding is the music of the world. And for me, that is different from, for example, it's not the same thing as saying purely abstract, but it's also not the same thing as saying subject. The subject matters, and the subject. Well, no, it doesn't. But the fact is, we're painting as impressionists. We're actually doing a search for where the music lies, and we're trying to actually draw it forth so that one can begin to appreciate what he's living in. The wonder, the music of the spheres. The music of the stars, the music of color. It's the same. To me, it's the same thing. But the of part, of the, right? So to me, it's in a sense, I'm going to, just simply say that I believe what I'm doing is celebrating creation. I'm actually celebrating God's, phenomenal handiwork. And I'm saying, don't you see, right? We're just digging deeper into the stuff out there, I mean, why does God even bother to put color into flowers? Why did he make the rainbow? Why is light a rainbow instead of just white? I mean, why can't we just use artificial white? We can, of course. Being facetious. But I'm going to show some, I'm going to have some, at least one, if not two, paintings, because that I'm going to show that are abstract art. I was, a bunch of years ago, there was a show in Washington, D.C., I think in relation to the White House or a facility associated with the White House, and they'd put on somebody had curated this entire abstract art show. And it was truly phenomenal. I mean, every single one of the pieces in it, if my memory serves me, and there was a catalog that I was looking at, I didn't see the show, but every single one of the pieces in it was visually beautiful. And the difference between abstract painting that's visually beautiful and modern realism that's visually ugly is fascinating, isn't it? I mean, to me, the greatest threat of representational painting today is that people will lack that part of the soul of our field. I mean, ugliness of soul, or the sick and the tragic and the miserable, and which is, to me, it's probably the product of the left and the tendency of the orientation around social justice and all that junk from the back in the 15s, the 10s, the early part of that century, that last century. But if you've looked at any of my other work, you know where I'm coming from here. And frankly, Gamble came from the same place. I'm not making this stuff up. I know the history. I know the background. Doing concerted attacks on the Boston School coming out of New York, coming out literally of the socialists in New York, the socialist artists. And they were attacking the Boston School because of beauty, because they actually were painting, and they cloaked it, and they're painting scenes of privileged women in privileged interiors. No, they weren't. They were painting their families because they were cheap models, but they were painting beauty. They were trying to find abstract beauty, and fitting in perfectly into the very idea in the arts that subject is nothing, and it is nothing actually. And Alfred Stebbins, any of the great painters, you should know these guys, but they'll say exactly that. Now you could say, well, it's belied by the fact that they make subject pictures. No, it isn't, not even a little. The very nature of this art is something other, and that's one of the things that makes Degas so fascinating. And I'm going to actually get you get the public an analysis of Degas that covers this explicitly. I'm working on that as well now, and I certainly hope I live long enough to produce these things. But Degas got that, and the longer he lived, the more he got that it's about the music and the music of color. I mean, he took Monet, and Monet is, he really is the music of the world in front of you. But what Degas did is he actually treated it in a more purely abstract, and you might call it decorative way. I think it was he himself. I think he referred to himself once as. This is a quote from somebody else, but it was effectively the same as that guy's quote, which was that I think of myself as a decorator without a job. But it's the very nature of our art on one level, and it's a requirement. It's like the aesthetic is the visual. It's not the actual. It's not the stuff of nature in the sense of object and meaning and stories and stuff. It's actually the song, the visual song. So that's me. I'm separating myself completely from people who think otherwise, and that's when you're trying to find somebody to study with. That's exactly what you should be saying to yourself. Where do I live? What have I seen? How do I want to evolve, right? Because that's, as I said many times to people, make sure you remember who brought you to the dance, and do the honor it, in your life. Bring more of that to the public, the thing that you found magical. Well, this reminds me actually of what I consider the total tragedy of modern teaching, modern schools. I mean, not teaching, but. I had a student who actually attended Mass College of Art, and I participated actually in critiquing his and other people's work over there at one point. But I was interested in the fact that this young man went to the counselor and wanted to know where he could. And the counselor wanted to know where to place him, what he was interested in, that sort of thing. And she said, "So, what would you like to do? What are you trying to, what is art to you, et cetera, and how can we help you?" And he said, basically, I'd like to paint like Vermeer. And this woman's response to him was, that'll change. And I to this day, find that deplorable. To me, that's the defiling of youth. The defiling of idea of somebody who comes in with actually a dream and a vision and a love. And then you spend your time with him trying to shift him into something he ain't. I have another student who's went through it multiple levels, Wellesley College and then BU, and this was persistently what they would do. They would try to force you into something. That's what the problem of going to college is, though. It's a classic mistake. Don't go study with people you don't love the work they do. I mean, don't do it. You're in the midst of either making or destroying culture by participating with people who are into its destruction. And be thoughtful about what you're doing, I mean, for crying out loud, but stick with what you believe in, stick with what you've seen with your innocent eyes when you're young. Doesn't mean things won't change, I say you won't evolve, but it does mean that you do put yourself at some significant risk when you don't know the motives of those people. It turns out that was Mass College of Art, and it turns out the catalog for the year, either the year before or the year after, actually said the director of the department says, we consider ourselves agents of change. That's a classic left-wing phrase, agents of change, so let the buyer beware. But I'm going to show you the work. That was got pretty negative, didn't it? But what I wanted to talk about actually is Georgi Kepish. Georgi Kepish was the head of the visual arts department at MIT for a bunch of years. And I knew him in Boston, stood before the Fenway Studios once, and maybe even helping us load some of his pictures in for a show. And I said, I actually like your work. I find it attractive in terms of texture, in terms of color. I find it visually attractive, even in terms of light effects and things like that. And it's purely abstract. Then I said to him, but we said thank you or whatever. And I said, but 95% of modern abstract painting is just junk. And he said, well, yeah, that's true, but so is 95% of realism. And I thought, he didn't say realism, whatever the word was, representational painting, my field. And while I was just slightly taken aback, I wasn't, I couldn't disagree with him even a little bit. I mean, that's an interesting dilemma. The realist has got the same problem. You're either in sync with the great significance of the very definition of what we do, the aesthetic, the definition of the aesthetic word, the word aesthetic, or you're what, where do you live? So you're up to something else, and that's the easiest way. I suggest students don't even talk about modern art and what's happening today in the art schools. All this stuff with putting crucifixes in urine and stuff like that. I mean, that's it's not interesting. It's got nothing to do with the past, with the great stuff of the past. There's no connection. Period. There isn't any. It's all political. It's the politicization of art. It's the ways of attacking your enemies. In fact, actually, it's interesting that Picasso actually said that's what his art was for. He said it was for attacking my enemies. I mean, like, great. I guess that's the model now, huh? For the art world. But yes, it is actually something very like that. It's all become versions of your version of social justice. But anyway, again, I'm totally off in this negative place, which is inevitable, I guess, when you talk about the modern abstract world, but at least the world of modern art. But so I gave you that idea that, so I'm going to show you at some point, and you can make the decision for yourself. And I'd use this, the pictures of Georgi Kepish, but I use these, and I hope they come across well on screen, but I use these guys in my lectures on composition, on color, on the color portion of composition, for really good reasons. Leighton's a great painter, and his color is not bad. And yet I can show you side-by-sides with the Kepish, and I've tried to do that, a Kepish and a Leighton, and ask you which is more beautiful in color, and I will tell you, if you think it's the Leighton, you're mistaken. And they're the same kind of color scheme, but the song of music that's in that Kepish, it's the stuff of our grand tradition. And I love him for it, why wouldn't I? So those of you out there lost in the realist world, who are in the world of hating everything that has anything to do with the word modern in it that way, you might want to look, as I say, you might want to look to yourselves and look around at the world of realism and find out what that's about, Anywhere between self-aggrandizing and subject negativity and dark junk that isn't sublime in any way, never mind beautiful. Which is the world you prefer. At some point you make decisions on those bases. So, man, this got to be a little aggressive, and I'm sorry about that. But that's the nature of it. Yes. So, could some abstract art be seen as pure form, as a pure form of using color to generate an effect? I'm going to show you some. You'd think this guy might have studied with me, but he didn't. Anyway, but to generate an effect, and that word, I just want to end with that, because to generate an effect, what is that, But to generate a harmony, if you mean an effect, meaning harmonious, that's how Degas still owns the definition of what a great art is, and that is it's harmony. It's in the same class as what makes music. And so when, instead of saying effect, you get effects of all kinds and not have beauty, not have the stuff that makes music, and so, or poetry. And so keep that in mind as you work through that with that word effect. But yeah, I think I've said that pretty well, and at least adequately for now. And if somebody wants to follow up and challenge me or whatever, please do. Otherwise, please just share a ton, would you? Your friends anywhere. If you can subscribe, those who follow where I'm going and are amused or interested, rather fascinated by it, or like it, and share like crazy. Did I say that? I did. Comment. That's what I'm looking for now. All right. Thanks very much. Look forward to seeing you. Wish I could see you.